It is 4 p.m. and your typically calm, mild-mannered mom is now pacing the house, opening and closing closet doors. She's shadowing you around the house, following you everywhere. Or worse, she's actually trying to get away from you, running out of the house. Welcome to Sundowning. Sundowning is real, and sundowning is terrifying if you do not know what to do. Well, today, Care Partners, I am going to teach you what to do in those circumstances because there are actual practical strategies that you can employ to stave off sundowning. For those of you who are new here, my name is Dr. Sinclair. I'm a neuropsychologist and dementia care specialist. So let's jump on into those strategies. Before you can understand what to do about sundowning, Care Partners, you first have to understand what sundowning is and what the symptoms of sundowning are. And I'm going to explain just that. So sundowning, Care Partners, by definition, means that your loved one with dementia, oftentimes in the late afternoon into evening hours, start experiencing more confusion or agitation or anxiety. You're noticing a stark shift in their presentation. The part that is often left out for Care Partners that many doctors don't share or maybe don't even know themselves is that this agitation and confusion builds gradually throughout the day. What do I mean by that? So let's say your loved one with dementia has not gotten enough water throughout the day. Let's say that they're in an overstimulated environment, a lot of noise, a lot of activity. Let's say that there's been a sharp change from their routine or they missed a medication dosage. So we have a few variables that happen throughout the day that built over the day, and at 4 p.m. was their tipping point because the brain was just so fatigued. So the confusion and agitation that you're seeing, Care Partners, while it may seem as if it came on abruptly out of nowhere, actually it was building throughout the day across these several events. Think about it, Care Partners, as a pot of water on a stove and there's a lid on top. And this pot of water is filled. And so all of those sensory experiences and events that I just went through out the day, you're now turning up the heat on that pot of water. So your loved one's not getting water, your loved one missed medication doses, your loved one's in a loud environment, you've turned up the heat. Over the day, that pot is going to bubble up. And I want for you to think of sundowning in that way. And so the skills that you're going to learn today, Care Partners, is learning how to turn down each of those experiences throughout the day for your loved one so that you can avoid that boiling over, that sundowning episode at 4 p.m. Now, symptoms. What are the symptoms of sundowning? So as I described, there's confusion, there's agitation, there's anxiety, but let's go a little bit deeper. The way that I like to explain it to my Care Partners is think of it as who, what, where, when. So the who symptoms, your loved one with dementia may not know who they are. They may not know who you are. They may say, get away from me. You're not my husband. What are you talking about? And so that's the who. The what, they may not know what they're supposed to do. So they're pacing, they appear restless, they're following you around, trying to look for clues as to what to do. They're opening cupboards, etc. So they don't understand the what, okay? They don't know the who, they don't know the what, they don't know the where. They probably don't recognize where they are. They may say things like, I want to go home, even though they are home. They are just completely confused as, what is this building that I'm in? Okay, so the who, what, where, and when. They may also be confused with the time period. They may not know the time of day. They may not even know the year that they're in. So they're very confused with time periods. Part of them trying to escape the house is because they don't know where they are, they don't know what this house is, and it doesn't look familiar to them. And when they look at you and you're saying, I'm your husband, no way you're my husband. Your loved one with dementia probably thinks that they're in their 30s. You are this 80-year-old man saying that you're her husband. She's not going to believe you. She's in a different when. She's in a different time period. Okay, so who, what, where, when. Those are the symptoms that you can look out for in those late afternoon hours that's indicative of a sundowning episode coming on. A few other symptoms to keep in mind, Care Partners, is your loved one may experience sleep disturbances, so difficulty falling asleep or even staying asleep. They may also experience hallucinations, so seeing or hearing or feeling things that aren't really happening, Or they may experience paranoia, so having a lot of suspicion about you, especially if they're confused about who you are. So those are some additional symptoms to keep track of. So now that you know what sundowning is, care partners, I often get the next question, Dr. Sinclair, why does this happen? Care partners, we know some variables around why this happens, but we don't have the full answer. Scientists and researchers are still trying to figure this out. What we do know is that dementia degrades the brain over time, and as the brain is failing your loved one, we know that it's also impacting different systems. One of the systems that it impacts is your circadian rhythm, so your sleep-wake cycle. That's that internal clock that's inside of all of us. And so when that gets disrupted, we tend to see loved ones with dementia entering into a sundowning episode. We also know that hormonal fluctuations throughout the day for your loved one with dementia can lead to a sundowning episode. We also know that an overstimulating environment, as I mentioned earlier, so a crowded environment, a loud environment that's there and building up throughout the day, we know that that can also bring on a sundowning episode. We also know that illnesses and infections can bring on sundowning episodes. So while we have all of these variables, care partners, we can't pinpoint exactly the cause of sundowning episodes, but we do know the variables contributing to them, and that's why we're going to use what we do know to minimize the probability of that happening in your household. So knowing those causes of sundowning, partners, let's go ahead and mitigate the risk of it happening. Strategy number 1 is resetting that circadian rhythm through morning light exposure. Oftentimes, our loved ones with dementia do not go outside often enough. They're staying inside, watching TV, and no judgment, care partners. Most times they don't want to go outside anymore, and trying to get them outside is a chore. But if you can actually reset their circadian rhythm with that morning sunlight, that can make a world of a difference. So within 10 to 15 minutes of your loved one with dementia waking up, if maybe you can have morning tea, morning breakfast, morning coffee on the deck, the patio, in the backyard, if you can get a bit of that morning sunlight, even if it's a cloudy day, onto your loved one's eyes, that's going to help to reset their rhythm. We have these things called photoreceptors on our eyeballs that allows the light to come in, and it helps to reset that circadian rhythm. So get your loved one out in the morning if you can. For those of you who live in areas where you have minimal light, and I'm thinking of some of the Nordic countries, then light therapy can also be effective for your loved one with dementia. First thing in the morning when they wake up, if you can give them that light therapy. Now, again, that's an alternative for those of you who have no other option, but the best is actually sunlight. Our next strategy, care partners, to mitigate sundowning will rely on what we discussed earlier about sundowning. Remember, it is something that builds throughout the day. So that means that this strategy, care partner, is going to be reliant upon you paying close attention to what your loved one is doing. Are they drinking enough? Dehydration is one of the biggest culprits that thrusts your loved one with dementia into a sundowning episode. And so for that, care partners, you can get a large bottle of water that has either the ounces on it or has the time of day on it, just something in which you can measure how much water your loved one is getting throughout the day. Also, are they eating well-balanced meals throughout the day, care partners? So dehydration, malnourishment, that can all contribute to a sundowning episode, as well as missing medication dosages. So what I often see is my care partners are so busy tending to the many things that's going on for their loved one with dementia that they forget the more chronic basic conditions that their loved one have had throughout many years. And the biggest one that I see is arthritis. So your loved one with dementia has arthritis. They're losing awareness to tell you that they're having pain or that they need their Tylenol or pain meds, their NSAIDs. They're losing that ability, and you just forget to give it to them. So that pain slowly builds throughout the day, and then at 4 p.m., boom, they're having a sundowning episode. So pay close attention, care partners, to what's happening throughout the day for your loved one with dementia, and think of those culprits. I often see those first. It's usually dehydration, a bit of pain building throughout the day, and then that boom, okay? This segues well into our next strategy for mitigating sundowning. And the next strategy is to stave it off altogether, right? So we want to have a wind down routine for your loved one with dementia. That 4 p.m. hour, the brain is fatigued and exhausted, and so it's lost the resources to take care of your loved one with dementia. And so if we can create a wind down routine, a relaxing routine at that time, and we want to start preparing for sundowning, not at 4 p.m. when it tends to happen, but at 3 p.m. or 2:30. We want to create that soothing environment for the brain, because at 4 p.m. it's telling you, I'm exhausted, I can't hold it together anymore. So we want to calm the brain down, and we want to start that at around 3 p.m. if possible. And what that can look like is closing the shades, because the brain is taking in a lot of stimulation from all the activity outside, in addition to all of the shadows and all of the things that's going on inside. So let's minimize some of that stimulation for the brain. Let's maybe close the blinds, have softer lighting on in the room, have nice calming music going on. Again, we come back to music quite a bit for a dementia affected brain, because the part of the brain that houses our music abilities is usually the strongest across most of the dementia types. So we want to bring some nice soothing music into the space. We want to have a clear space, not cluttered. So if there's one area of the house that your loved one loves to go to, let's sit them down in there, have a nice blanket over them at about 3 p.m. Let's put on the Calm app. I have no affiliation with them, but some sort of relaxation app. Even YouTube has guided meditations on here, so you can get something guided on for them. Headphones, just shutting out some stimulation, having them be in a nice quiet space, relaxing. Okay, we want that brain to just sort of settle so that it doesn't go to that tipping point. If any of this is helpful for you, care partners, or if you've learned something new about sundowning that you've not known before, what I tend to hear from my care partners is, wow, I didn't know that this was something that built over the day. No one ever explained that to me. So if you've learned something new, or if you're finding it helpful, care partners, then please go ahead and like this video and share it with other care partners who are probably struggling and who this information could be helpful for them as well. So let's move on to the next strategy to mitigate sundowning. Our next strategy, care partners, is that you want to engage your loved one in an activity during those sundowning hours. So if your loved one is not someone who's doing the previous strategy, like they're very restless and it's hard for them to stay calm, even though you're starting before the sundowning, but you've noticed that it's hard for them to stay in their chair and meditate, then you want to engage them in an activity that is fun and pleasurable for them. And for that, care partners, I do recommend repetitive activities. Something that you would think is quite childish, but actually for a dementia-affected brain, it's soothing. And what that could look like is folding towels. What that could look like is sorting the forks and the knives into the drawer. What that could look like is matching socks and folding them into a ball. That may seem very ridiculous, as I mentioned, or childish to you, but for a dementia-affected brain, that repetitive nature actually soothes it. It gives it a bit of a break. So feel free to give your loved one a pleasurable activity that they either enjoy, or some household chore that is repetitive in nature that keeps the brain busy. Care partner, I do want to leave you with a tip. If you got in too late and you're noticing some of those symptoms, those signs and symptoms of a sundowning episode, your loved one is starting to get confused and agitated, it's not too late. You can still be that calming presence for them. I know that that's easier said than done, especially for some of you who've already witnessed a sundowning episode, and that can be very scary and disorienting for you. It's hard to think, how can I lead with calmness? But care partners, if you can take a deep breath and settle your body, you'd be surprised at how effective you could be with helping your loved one with dementia. When they are sundowning and so terrified, and then you are equally terrified, it becomes a cycle of emotional dysregulation. And if you can try your best as much as possible to lead with calmness, keeping your voice calm and saying, sure, I'll help you find your way home, or how can I help? You'll be surprised at how your calm nature can impact your loved one with dementia. And for those of you who need a little bit more direction with that, then go ahead and watch my next video where I teach you how to calm an agitated loved one. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.